Welcome to Nobody Told Me. I'm Laura Owens.
And I'm Jan Black.
Would you like to be more successful? Can you define what success really means to you? And do you have a plan to achieve it?
For some help with those questions, we talk with our guest, Wharton professor G. Richard Schell, who's an award-winning author and the creator of a very popular Wharton School course on the meaning of success. He's also developed a course on success for Coursera, the world's leading online learning platform. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You wrote a very popular book called Springboard, Launching Your Personal Search for Success. Why has the search for success fascinated you?
Well, that's a great question. Myself, I think, are trying to help people with questions that I ask in a very deep way and a very persistent way earlier in my life when I was in my 20s and early 30s. Of course, I'm still asking them, but it was more of a crisis back then. And I think that a lot of people experience, especially in the years sort of between college and marriage, the sort of odyssey years in the 20s and early 30s, a kind of nagging thought that they have to get their lives right, and that if they are not right, there's something wrong with them. Mm-hmm. And it tends to cause a fair amount of angst and sometimes even depression and a real sense of, am I in the right place? Who am I? What am I doing? And since I went through that myself, I really feel like it's an opportunity for me at this stage of the game, I'm a little further down the road, to reach back and help people answer those questions. Most success books are by people who think they're successful, and then they say, do it the way I did it. My book is really how do you define success? How would you achieve it with your unique capabilities and your unique perspectives on life? So it's more of a way of helping people ask and answer the question than it is a kind of telling them how to do it.
We'd love to hear more about your background because you have such an interesting and inspiring story.
Sure. Well, I was raised in a military family. So my dad was a general in the Marines. My grandfathers were both in the military. My sister married a military officer. I was destined to be a military career. And really the only question that I was asking when I was in high school was, should I go to West Point or Naval Academy? But then as I got a little closer to the college sort of decision, I began realizing that I might want to go to an actual college, not an academy. But they gave me a chance through a scholarship that the military has to go to college for free anywhere you want to go if you can pass this test. So I took the test. I passed the test. My parents said, well, okay, it's same obligation, same military career. You just go to a different place. So I got into college, and it's still right on plan. But then in the middle of college, I was in the Vietnam generation, and the whole Vietnam War sort of confronted me with a whole different set of decisions than my parents had to face. They were the World War II generation. And I suddenly realized that the path that I was on was aiming me at going into combat to kill Vietnamese people that I had no quarrel with whatsoever. And I became a war resister. So from a general in the Marine Corps family and a three-generation military heritage and legacy, I became a pacifist. Well, when you make that kind of break, it is incredibly disruptive on almost every level of your psyche. And so I persisted. I graduated from college. I did alternative service as a pacifist. I worked in ghettos of Washington, D.C. as a social worker. But I was really pretty lost. When you cut off your past, as I did, it's pretty hard to imagine the future. And so I ended up drifting a fair amount. I worked as a bricklayer. I was a waiter. I was a house painter. And finally, I just took off and all my life savings and headed out to see if I could find who I was by traveling, and ended up taking 2 years to go completely around the world with a backpack, living in as many places as I could that you can live for free. So I lived in Israel on a kibbutz, and I lived in monasteries in India and Sri Lanka and Korea, in Buddhist monasteries. And with that amount of time and the grace of God, I was able to come to some peace of mind about myself. I went home. I moved into my parents' basement. They had never stopped loving me, so they just welcomed me home. They were retired by the time I got home. And I spent a couple of years in Rockbridge County, Virginia, selling insulation door to door when I was in my late 20s, and getting to know my mom and dad. I'd left the United States, the son of a general and his wife, and I came home and got to meet a mother and a father. So then, I needed to make a living. My parents got tired of me being in the basement, and so I went to law school and became a lawyer for a little while. But there was a pretty strong sense that I acquired at law school that I knew I wanted to teach. And so I really made it my purpose after my first year in law school to do everything I could possibly do to get a teaching career in law. And so that's what I did. And I ended up at the age of 37 with my first real career as an assistant professor at the Wharton School of Business. We have a legal studies department that I'm now the chair of. And I've been here ever since, and I've loved every minute of it.
And how has your definition of success changed over that journey?
Oh, wow. That I would say one of the things that I learned while I was traveling and after I sort of had my crisis was you have to define success for yourself where you are. And wherever you are, you just need to know, okay, what do I need to do next in order to, take a step on a path. You may not know the destination, but I think people often, lose their job, or they break up in a relationship, or they have some crisis in their life, and they get down about it, and then they think, I got to fix it all. I got to have this one, magic pill or book I read or seminar I take, and that'll teach me the secret. And then once I have the secret, everything will work out. And that's just so wrong. There's no secret. There's just people. There's just life. There's just yourself. And I think early for me, it was wake up and plan a day so that I knew I would occupy myself in a productive way. And then when I came home, it was get to know my parents and rekindle the love I had for them and develop that relationship with my parents while they were still living. And then it was get a professional degree, make a living. And then so I kind of view the whole thing as more like a river where there's lots of rocks in the river. I don't know if you've ever seen a river pass where there's rapids and rocks that are sort of fallen from a mountainside, and you can sort of jump from rock to rock. Mm-hmm. So I've come to think of it more like that. So wherever you are, you get to the rock that's dry. You look ahead and see what your available options are that will keep your feet dry and that you can jump to without getting wet. And then you make the jump. And then you're at a new place. You look around. Things are different. You take your next evaluation and decide where to go next. So it's much more iterative. I think if you actually ask most people who you would define as successful in a kind of career sense, or celebrities or whoever they are, if you really got them in a room and they told you the truth, as opposed to write a book that makes it look like it was inevitable, I think they would tell you that it was about 80% luck. Luck in a special sense, not luck like the lottery, but luck like they prepared themselves and they kept their eyes open, and then good things happened. But they never really knew what the next good thing might be. But they were awake enough to see that it was a good thing and take that step. And then you end up where you end up. I'm sure that, Jan, you and Laura are doing what you're doing, and I'll bet if you look back on the last 10 years, you would probably not have predicted that you'd be doing exactly what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But you're doing it well, you're doing it with spirit, and you're fulfilling yourselves by the fact that you've discovered this.
Very true.
One of the things that I love about my Apple Watch is how easy it makes my daily routine. I use it to set alarms, check texts, calculate my heart rate during runs, and keep track of my sleep. But here's something new that I love about my Apple Watch. It helps me take my personal trainer with me wherever I go. I travel all the time, and I use an app called Future that has changed the way I'm hitting my workout goals.
Future pairs you up with one of their world-class trainers, and coaches create your personalized workout plan, tailored specifically to your schedule, your routine, your goals, and your progress. I love how Future is custom made for me. Future asked what my goals are. Do you want to improve your cardio and speed, get stronger and leaner, or simply get active again? I want to get leaner and more active, and I'm doing so with the help of my Future coach.
Your coach checks in with you daily to keep you on track, sending texts, making adjustments to your routine, and following your progress logged on your Apple Watch. Don't have an Apple Watch? No problem. When you sign up to train with Future, they send you everything you need, including an Apple Watch.
Don't overpay for a trainer. Get the workouts you need to meet all your fitness goals and take your trainer with you wherever you go with Future.
Sign up for Future today at tryfuture.com/nobodytoldme and get 50% off your first month.
That's tryfuture.com/nobodytoldme for 50% off your first month. Tryfuture.com/nobodytoldme.
You talk about how happiness is related to success, and I'm wondering what you would say to people who say that they need to be successful in order to be happy.
Well, I think there's some truth to that. There's a fair amount of research that shows that achieving goals gives a kind of strong dose of dopamine. You have a brain chemistry effect. When you achieve a goal, there's some satisfaction that comes from that. And some people experience goal achievement as a kind of happiness. It's temporary. Anybody who's achieved a goal knows that after a little while, it sort of wears off and you start looking for the next goal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think especially achievement-oriented people who get a lot of juice out of achieving goals, are getting happiness from achievement. It's not the only kind of happiness. It's probably not the most lasting kind of happiness, but it is a form of it. And so I think there's some truth to that. But success, I teach a whole semester-long course on this, and I also have this Coursera class, and I wrote a book. And whenever I get in a group of people and we start talking about success, my first request is let's stop using the word success. Because what people really mean when they talk about that word is some combination of achievement and happiness. And everybody has a different mix. It's like a stew. And everybody's got a different sort of taste for how that balance should be. And the word success applies to the balance of the two things, not to one or the other. So I think people who get some satisfaction from achieving goals probably might also get a very deep form of happiness from having a committed relationship based on love. Well, you really can't apply goal-setting technology to falling in love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a different problem. And it really requires vulnerability and openness. And so, I think someone who just says it's all about achievement is going to miss a huge dimension of life. And we all know people who are successful in the sense that they have a lot of money or they're famous or whatever they are and are deeply unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they lack connection with other people or because they're neurotic or self-deceived in some way when they haven't paid attention to their own mental health or their physical health. So I don't think it's all about achievement. I don't think it's irrelevant. Achievement is important, but I don't think that that's the whole story.
You urge people to ask themselves the question, what do I do better than most? Why is that important?
Because I think people, again, they overstate the problem. People tend to think, well, in order to achieve something, I have to be the best in the world at it. And I'm not the best at the world in anything, so I might as well give up. And I think that's very self-limiting. So I pose the question, what do you do better than most? Not a one thing. I think it's important to recognize what's under that question is what combination of capabilities do you have, which when they act together, present the world with a talent that's better than most. So the activity that you guys are engaged in, which is putting on a great podcast, which requires preparation, planning, being articulate, having good rapport between you. There are all these things going on underneath what you do that are actually individual capabilities, but you found a way to combine them to create a successful enterprise. And that's what I mean by what's something you do better than most. What's the combination of your capabilities that when they're packaged together, do you do better than most? Because if you take, let's say someone's a good writer. Okay, they're a good writer, so that means they're in the top 20% for writers. But they're also a good speaker. Not all the good writers are good speakers. So now they're in the top 20% for two things. Well, when you put those two things together, you're actually in the top 5% of people who speak and write that when you do both very well. And then they add a third thing, which is they happen to be knowledgeable about South African history. And now we're talking about someone who's probably already in the top 1% of people who will study or talk about or teach South African history because they're a great writer, can speak well, and they know more than most people about this thing. That's the kind of combination that I think brings extraordinary success and also brings a lot of distinction, fulfillment, and joy.
And then how do you teach these people to have self-confidence? Is that kind of just, like you said, combining all of their skills and telling them, hey, you know what, you're unique? Because I know a lot of people do struggle with confidence issues and they just don't feel like they're good enough.
Yeah, well, confidence is an independent variable. You can be, you know, there's you can read a lot of biographies of famous actors who are very insecure, but they're very good actors. So I think confidence actually, in my view, confidence comes. Well, I think part of it is genetic. Mm-hmm. You know, you are endowed with a certain set of genes that bring you a kind of level of resilience that is just innate. You know, you're lucky you got the genes for resilience. But part of it also is surviving failure. And whatever failure is, I think failure is really your version, your addition of not meeting expectations set by somebody, or falling short of some goal that you set for some reason that disappoints you greatly. And I think the experience of going through downs, whether they're psychological or professional, and coming out the other side, where at the end of it you can say, well, I learned something and I'm stronger than I was for having gone through this. I think that's actually the seeds of confidence. Because once, you know, Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. And and a lot of people, I think, go through, I had my own life crisis when I was in my 20s and came out of it. And that gave me a kind of fundamental confidence. Nothing I'm going to do is going to be worse than those years were when I was, you know, just wandering without a purpose and without a family and, you know, just in the dumps. And people who go into the military sometimes come out with a kind of sense that they can survive whatever life's going to throw at them. I love to say to my students, because I have some pretty high-performing students, and a lot of them are deeply disturbed about whether they, you know, are going to make it or not, even though they've already achieved something that most people don't, which is getting into an Ivy League school. And I say, look, go back in your life and honor the failures that you've experienced, honor the conflicts that you've overcome, even if you don't think they rate on a scale of martyrdom or, you know, Gandhi-like difficulties. They're yours, and embrace them, and give yourself credit for getting through them. And that's where you build confidence, is go back at your own life and recognize what you've overcome to get there.
You talk about the 4 powers of the mind that can help us accomplish long-term goals. You talk about passion, imagination, intuition, and reason. Can you elaborate on those a little bit?
Sure. I think understanding how your human system works is pretty important as you kind of feature what you're going to learn and what you can learn from a given experience. I think passion is motivation. So you really want to look in there and see what is it that gets you up in the morning and that powers the engine that's going to put you out there in the world, either to be vulnerable and form relationships or to, accomplish something by getting a degree at school or by moving through a career ladder or whatever is going on. So I think it's helpful to know what your motivations are. I think passion is a word that sometimes also gets misused. People say follow your passion. And it's like there's only one, and if you don't find it, you're a failure again, and you're lost, and it's not worth it. Passion, in my view, is what are the things that motivate you? It could be you're motivated to help others. It could be you're motivated to bask in the attention of others and perform for people. It could be you're motivated by excellence or craft, the sort of finishing things that are beautiful. But whatever they are, you should know them because you want to be doing stuff that is the following wind of your passions are helping you and keeping you going. Intuition is a kind of it's a subconscious part of the human system, and it's what's learning when you're not aware of it. People say, I had an intuition about that person. I thought they probably were not what they appeared to be. But what's really going on when they have that perception is their judgment, seasoned over thousands of interactions with humans, and coming to certain conclusions based on experience about the way people present themselves, subconsciously is sending a message saying, on balance, this person falls into a questionable category, and all you know is that you feel this sense of distrust. But actually, a lot of mental processing is happening under the surface. And I think the more you expose yourself to any given set of experiences, the more your intuition will become articulate about that. And you're turning over to your subconscious a lot of work, which takes a lot more time if you have to think about it. So what you spend time on is what you're going to have intuitions about that are trustworthy, in my view. You can have intuitions that aren't trustworthy, but that's just overconfidence, which is something you shouldn't pay that much attention to. So imagination, of course, is your ability to conceive the future and to put together things that are not real. They exist first in your mind, and then you can maybe go about making them real. So I had a dream to become a professor. My intuitions told me that would use my capabilities as I perceive them and combine a bunch of things. Before I even traveled, I was an improvisational actor, for example, and I love learning. And then my imagination produced a dream to be a professor. So then I went about trying to figure out what the credentials were that would get me to that outcome. But it occurred first as an imagination moment. I thought, I want to see if I can do that. So I think dreaming is important. And then reason is the problem-solving engine. So you encounter a difficulty, it's relatively novel. Your intuitions are not going to get you there. So now you have to think about it. And that is effortful. It means you're going to be putting together different kinds of activities and learnings and ideas and reason to, logic in order to craft a hypothesis about how to solve it, and then drop back, rethink, move forward. So I think when you combine all four of these capabilities in one activity, passion, intuition, imagination, reason. And I think I get a chance to do that in what I do as a professor. And I'll bet you guys do as podcasters.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Then you're hitting it. You get up in the morning, it's not work.
Right. Exactly. And that's the goal. I've always been fascinated by why some people achieve success over others when, say, two people start a startup and they both have the same education. They both work really hard. They both come from good families. Why is one more successful than the other?
Luck. Honestly, I mean, my last semester I taught my success course. The final paper was what is luck and what does it have to do with success? And it's fascinating. When people write about success, it always is a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. And of course, people who are successful write the story, and so it all looks like it fits together. People who don't achieve the stuff they set out to don't write books, but it's just the same for them. They did the same things. They were as passionate about it, but in the middle of it, the global economic crisis happened, or there was a tsunami someplace that killed the interest rates in Japan, or whatever the random events are. Maybe they got sick. Maybe their money sources dried up for some reason. Maybe they had a bad marketing advisor who came up with the wrong slogan. I think that the old saying is, success is when preparation meets opportunity. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so the best you can do is prepare and persist. And then after that, you have to turn it over to some power greater than you and take what you get. As long as you're doing what you can do, then the world's going to send you an echo. And if it doesn't work out, then you back up and try again.
Tell us about the success course you developed for Coursera. How can people find out more information about it, and how can they take it?
Sure. The success course on Coursera is essentially an output after both the course at the Wharton School and the book. And what I realized was, in order to reach a larger audience and give other people a chance to think about these concepts on their own, I could create this Coursera experience, and then it would be self-governed, you could self-pace learning. And there was a moment when I created it that it all came together, and I'm very proud of it. I walked into my office, and we were looking for a place to film it, and I said, we're going to film it here. And I sat down, they put the cameras in my office, and I realized that when I'm in my office and I was talking to the crew, I was talking to my students. It was office hours in my office. And so the whole experience of this course is me talking to each individual who takes it in my office as if they were sitting right there with me. And there are some exercises that I took from the book, some puzzles and sort of mind tweaks, some mind puzzles that you can do to think about success that I took from the book and the course. And then they have to write a final essay, very short, on what they think success means and how they intend to achieve it. And it's been very satisfying. I read all of the essays. There are thousands of them now, but I read them all. I reply to a fair number. They're very inspiring, of people from all over the world who've gone through this and have been able to either be reassured that they're on the right path, having done the course, or discovered a new path, a new goal, a new way of thinking about this word. A lot of people who take the Coursera class come to this realization that they've been single-mindedly pursuing achievement without the happiness side. And that's a major insight when you really get it for yourself, because it makes the whole journey to success much, much more interesting and more nuanced than they had, and probably a lot more likely to achieve satisfaction. So it's on the Coursera platform. It's part of a suite of 4 courses that we designed called Achieving Personal and Professional Success. It's the first one in the set of 4. And I really encourage anybody who wants to investigate this at their leisure and in their own time, at home, whatever. It's just 18 hours with me in my office, essentially.
Hey, that sounds awesome. I would like to sign up.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And as you know, our show is called Nobody Told Me. So at the end of each show, we ask our guests, what is your nobody told me lesson? And you've done so much work with success over the years and had your own great story. And I'm wondering what the one thing is that nobody told you about success that after all these years you wish that they had.
Wow. I would say nobody told me that it was about trial and error. I had the impression that it was a search for a diamond under a hill. And so you just had to go find it. And if you didn't find it, you weren't successful. And it was very hard to find, and it was very difficult. And what I've learned is that actually the search is inside yourself, not outside yourself. And it's about trial and error. It's about learning about yourself by exposing yourself to new experiences, new challenges, learning, growing, and then continuing.
And how can people connect with you on social media and the internet?
They can't. I don't have Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I wouldn't know what to do with it if someone hit me over the head with it. So they can buy my books. They can take my course on Coursera. They can find me on the web. I'm easily identified on the Wharton website, and I have a personal website of grichardsschell.com that talks about my books. But as far as social media is concerned, I'm very happy to say I spend my time doing other things.
Good for you. I can't say the same about myself. Our thanks to Professor G. Richard Schell. And you can find out more about his course on success at Coursera. That's COURSERA.org/specializations/Wharton-success. And again, Professor Schell's website is grichardsschell.com. I'm Laura Owens.
And I'm Jan Black.
And you're listening to Nobody Told Me. Thank you so much for joining us.